Well, we're on episode 13, I believe, of Getting Your Life Back with Cade Cooper. Quickly, if you're new to my YouTube channel or my podcast, I launched this about a month and a half ago. The title is Getting Your Life Back with Cade Cooper. In it, I share my story of different trials that have happened in my life and how eventually I incorporated different tools and methods that worked to help, in large part, help me to overcome my trauma and start living my life again. I also, as part of this, bring on different people who've dealt with different types of trauma, and they may share different ways in which they got their life back. I realize not everyone heals the same way. I realize I don't know everything. My hope is just to help. I'm not having people pay for content. I've put a lot of time and money into finance this. This for me is a labor of love, and well, to be honest, it's a calling from God to share my experience, strength, and hope with others. So my goal is to help people process trauma so they can start living, and also hopefully to prevent you from going through trauma you don't have to. So as part of that, I've done individual episodes as well on different pertinent topics. One is, religion. I am religious, and it's more so to people that don't believe and think like me. I've talked about codependency and boundaries. I think the last one was the myth of friends with benefits. This episode will draw largely on codependency, and on this last episode 12, the myth of friends with benefits. So I can't go into all of those, but if you're interested in some of the stuff I talk about, I explain more so, the different aspects of how they interrelate with this topic. So, I've known I was going to do this for a long time. I've been single for about 6 years now, and as I've shared in the last episode, I certainly have not been perfect, but I've been able to cultivate good relationships with a lot of women. And part of that is, especially as I've gotten healthy, I don't want to push certain boundaries if there's no future. I can usually tell pretty quick if there's a chance that a gal and I might be compatible. And for me, I'm not 20 years old anymore. I don't need to get some. I don't think it makes me a big stud to do it. Blue balls have been exaggerated for millennia. And so through being friends with women and them realizing that my motives have been pure, I've heard a lot of stories. And I've heard their trauma, and I've heard the heartbreak and things that they've went through, from, bitter divorces, abandonments, betrayals, physical, emotional abuse, all these things. And working, in psychology and understanding it, I understand what the brain does to cope with trauma. And I regularly see men manipulate that trauma. I see them manipulate it in order to get sexual gratification from these girls. And then I see them talk about it and talk about what studs they are. Well, the top title of this is You Are Not a Stud. You're manipulating her trauma for your gratification. Well, first of all, the question arises, why not talk about women? Well, the short answer is I'm not a woman, so I don't feel very adequate about talking about women. At some point, I'll bring a woman in and she can talk about that. The other is, we have certain advantages to women that make me a little more sympathetic to women, mainly in the size, our physical features, right? I don't too much have to worry about a woman physically dominating me. Also, we're much more visually stimulated, where women are more emotionally stimulated, so they're much more prone to these deceptions than we are. But God has given women some evolutionary advantages as well. I talk a lot in the last episode about the part of your brain called the prefrontal cortex. Well, that's the part of your brain that's responsible for your desires, your appetites, and your drives. Also your moral reasoning. It's also where your intuition is. Well, it's interesting. A woman's prefrontal cortex is 3 times the size of a man's. Your intuition, 3 times stronger. Also, women can see, I didn't know this till later, but that gal that I still glances at the gym every once in a while and I think she can't see, she can see because she sees at a 45-degree angle. If I'm looking at 45 degrees, I can see my fingers move about. I can tell someone's there. I can't tell what you're doing. I especially can't tell who you're looking at. So God's literally given them eyes in the back of their head. When I talk with girls, the number one thing I say is, what does your gut say? I was in rehab years ago out in Baton Rouge, and there was this awesome guy who'd been in recovery for a long time, right? And he would give these 4-hour lectures, and they were incredible. But one day he asked, that little feeling you get, that little feeling in your gut, your intuition, is it ever wrong? And he's asking this to, people that are in rehab. Half of us don't believe in God. The other half are furious at God. I was probably somewhere in the middle. But if we were honest, it was never wrong. And he said, there's no way you're that smart. When women ask me about men nowadays, and, I get asked regularly, by and large, my response is, what does your gut say? What does your gut say? Because I think most of the time we get in trouble by not trusting that intuition, that gut. I call it the light of Christ. Also with your prefrontal cortex, it's paying attention to all different types of things. So I think that's your greatest defense. Your greatest defense of all this stuff is to pay attention to that. I talk about deception and predatorial behavior. And, I've done a lot of things, but I haven't used deception to get women. And I don't deal in that. My philosophies reveal everything about yourself and let things fall where they may. I'm to a point where I love myself, and the right person is hopefully going to accept me for who I am, so there's no need to do that. I'm not looking to get quick action or anything like that. So, and this episode is geared towards people that really want to find love. If casual sex is your thing, there's no judgment. If you're using manipulation, then obviously I have a little bit of an issue with that. But as far as your moral standard, it doesn't matter to me really what you do. If you look at my last episode, The Myth of Friends with Benefits, especially on a physical level, it's not healthy for you. If you want to find out why, you can check out that episode. I won't go into that now. But this episode is not so much morally, actually not at all morally, on what you should and shouldn't do, right? But it's helping people that want to find someone, specifically women, understand the manipulations men will do. So I want to tackle this in 3 parts. First, I'll talk about each manipulation, right? Secondly, I want to talk about, why that works on you. And thirdly, I want to talk about ways I think that, you can heal that, and so you can catch it next time and not have to go through it. I read a book a while back called Mind Hunters, and it was fascinating. It was the guy that kind of developed the psychology for profiling serial killers. And there was a common component with predators is they like easy targets, okay? They like easy targets. Same with predators and manipulators. They want what they want. They want it quick. They don't want to have to work. And so they look for weakness, right? And different guys manipulate different ways. Now, some guys, when they do this, they do it subconsciously. They just realize something works, and their intentions aren't bad. But there's a lot of guys that will also do it maliciously because it works. But, as I've studied psychology, I realized that trauma creates pretty predictable patterns of behavior. And it's not always the same, but it's usually pretty predictable. At this point, I can talk to someone for 5-10 minutes, and I can usually guess pretty, about 90 to 95% what your main trauma was, whether it was, abandonment or sexual abuse or, betrayal or whatever, because it's predictable. With that knowledge, I understand how to manipulate that trauma with people. It's something I have never done, nor will I ever do. Once I learn these things, I promised God I would use my gifts to, help people, to help women. And, as far as the woman for me, my guess is that my gifts in psychology probably won't help me at all. It'll probably be all the wrong things I say that end up being the right things. But I want to talk about these things. The first thing I want to talk about is codependency. So if you want to understand codependency better, you can watch my episode on it. I don't know everything about it, and there's certainly no way I can cover everything within an episode, but I think it's good. I think it especially if you're single, my age, or my culture, whatever. I think there's certain things that will resonate with you, but it'll kind of explain it. But it's very misunderstood, right? So in codependency, it's an actual addiction. It's getting addicted to another person, typically. Codependency is the chronic neglect of self, in order to gain love, validation, or acceptance from another person. Okay, so in a codependent relationship, there's usually an enabler, an enablee, or a fixer and a fixee. An addict that's using and a codependent will go together like white on rice. Well, why is that? Because the addict needs to be enabled, right? He needs or she needs someone to help them with their addiction. The codependent, although they may not like the stuff that the addict does, and it may create these rapid shifts in intensity, if they're spending all their time focusing on that addict, it numbs their pain. It numbs the pain, the stuff they have to deal with, just like a drug. They become addicted. Well, the problem is, like any drug, it exacts its consequences. By maintaining this relationship with someone, you're putting so much time and effort into it. Your kids are struggling, or your work is struggling, or you're not sleeping, or your health, or your diet, or whatever is struggling. It's the chronic neglect of self, again, in order to gain love, validation, or acceptance from another person. Well, women are a little more prone to this because of their sweet disposition in general. They want to help people. I often hear women say, oh, but I see good in him. Well, I know that it's there, like I can see it. God, I think when you meet someone, they should be overflowing with goodness, and you should be looking for the bad in them. Because guys who know how to manipulate codependency know how to show just that little sliver of hope. And, this is the manipulation. I've already done it in one of my episodes. This is what I would do if I was going to manipulate a codependent woman using my addiction. And I've been clean for a long time now, but this is what I would do, right? And by the way, I say this to women. They're like, that wouldn't work on me. Well, maybe not. But if I didn't preface it, right now is the time to be honest with yourself, because no one's judging you, no one knows. But I'm just hoping I'm throwing stuff out to heal. I would say, I've been trying to get clean for a long time, and it's so hard being a single dad and being by myself. And I try, and I believe if someone would just love me, if I could find a good woman to do this for, I could do it. But I just don't even know if I'm worth it anymore. I feel like I'm giving up. Well, using that line on a codependent woman is like fishing with dynamite. It works, okay? Because in the moment, it numbs whatever's going on, and woman or man, right? It can work both ways, but right now I'm just talking about men's manipulations. They numb themselves, and so someone who understands that will do that. A lot of time they'll lead with their pain, right? We trauma bond, right? We go out on a date, and I'm sad because this person, my ex, this person did this to me, and it broke me. Well, same thing happened to me. Wow, you understand me? Well, I'm scared about the direction of the world and what they are doing in schools or who's not present. Well, you are too. Yeah. Well, I'm angry with this situation and this corporation, whatever it is, right? We start to trauma bond. And it's a beautiful art. And if we really want to make it fun, we could throw a little alcohol on top and numb our inhibitions, and bam, we've got a codependent relationship that's marked by shifts in intensity, rapid highs and lows that we've probably all experienced that are single, that are addicting. Because what's happening with your brain, high amounts of dopamine, you don't feel safe, downregulate, you go back and forth. It's the old push and pull, right? Someone who leads with their trauma, that's a problem. You shouldn't be sharing your unresolved trauma with strangers. They cannot help you, right? My trauma, my stuff, I still have, I process all my trauma, but I still certainly have some, but I have hard things in my life. I don't share them with people that are less healthy than me. They don't offer me any help, right? And it doesn't attract me on a physical, sexual level or romantic level when someone's got a bunch of garbage, or I shouldn't say garbage, a bunch of baggage that they haven't worked through yet. So when someone starts spewing all their stuff immediately, even, and they can be good intentioned. I believe a lot of trauma bonding is ignorant, but it still leads to destructive stuff. It's also a tactic people use to form these connections, right? When I meet someone, I want to find out what's important to them. I want to listen to them. I want to tell them what's important about me. I'm trying to vet and see, hey, is this worth another date? Or I'm a busy guy. Are you worth, a certain, not worth, but well, yeah, in a sense, not that you're unworthy, but are you worth a certain amount of my time getting to know you? That's what I'm trying to do, right? As I build a trust in different things, I can talk about the hard things in my life if I feel like that person can be an asset and help me with it. So, when someone leads with those things, or when they show you little slivers of stuff and you find yourself just wanting to fix them at all costs, but you see that it is, destroying other paths of your life, it's probably not the best relationship to be into. I talk a lot in the last episode about casual sex. Eventually I'll do one on the scourge of pornography. And, I'm not making any moral judgments on, well, I certainly have more moral judgments on the creators of pornography, or people that manipulate for casual sex, but I'm not judging people based upon their actions, right? If you believe or think differently than me, I understand that. The science with either one of them is damning. What it does to your brain is damning. Casual sex without feeling safe produces zero oxytocin, much like porn. Eventually you won't be able to pair bond, which means you won't be able to connect emotionally, and that can lead to a whole other relationships independent of romantic ones. If you want to understand the science, again, check my last episode, The Myth of Friends with Benefits. But when someone is in their addiction, the addiction always wins. It just always wins. And sexual addiction is especially tough because it deals with the same thing you're doing, when you're dating that way. So eventually it will ruin the formation of oxytocin, that pair bonding thing. When someone is that way, they typically do certain things. People will, and again, this is for people that are wanting to find someone. If you're just looking for casual sex, hey, no issue with it if you're being honest about it. I still don't think it's good for you. I explained that already in the other episode, but that's not who I'm talking to. I'm talking to people who actually want to find someone, specifically women, but men keep manipulating them and hurting them to sleep with them. Well, these guys will test the waters, right? Extremely nice, extremely flirtatious, outgoing. Here's a little sexual jab, right? Here's a joke. Let's see how she goes there. Let's see how she goes there, right? Well, they'll continue to push to see and vet to see kind of where they can get. Well, one of the kickers here is actually I don't do this much anymore. Sexual banter at this point is reserved for, one person because it's special to me. But I used to do it quite a bit, but I wasn't trying to do this. But if they do it and then you tell them you're uncomfortable, they'll stop, but then they kind of prod again. They push again, right? This is trying to see if you're someone that eventually they can wear down and they can get what they want out of you. So that's one big way to detect that. Another way is if you're in any type of intimacy, whether you're making out or having sex or what, people that are engaged, especially in pornography, tend to try and shift and move you in unnatural movements. Well, typically that is recreating scenes that they've seen in pornography. Again, those are signs. Those are signs to look for. I'm a recovering addict. I've been, clean from porn for, a long, long time. I've been clean for 3.5 years from drugs. But I understand that when someone's in active addiction, the addiction wins. And they cannot change for you. They cannot change for you. They have to do it for themselves. I know a guy that's a admitted sex addict, and he says, I'm a good dude. Like I'm honest. I tell women, hey, I'm a sex addict. Well, later he confided in me that 1 in 4 will sleep with him. It's not necessarily he's being a good upfront dude. He's just going through the past and just looking for that 1 in 4 that is, is traumatized as he is, and they hook up. So sometimes transparency is not always, it's still good, but it can be used as a manipulation as well. So that's particularly with codependent people, right? If you find yourself trying to fix people all the time to the detriment of your happiness, if you find yourself, trying to look and help, and don't get me wrong, it is the whole reason I'm doing this is to help people. right? I leave the 99 and I go look for the one, whether it's in a crowd, whether it's in this video, wherever it is, but not to the point to where my life falls apart. Because if keeping a relationship or trying to help you make so I can't be a good father to my kids, or I'm not sleeping or eating well, or my job suffers, then that's not a good relationship. So, you know, if you are codependent, if you realize that you're prone to these types of deceptions or even ignorant, you know, interactions, there are resources to get help. Therapy is wonderful. There are a lot of wonderful therapists that specialize in codependency. There's books. Codependent No More and Boundaries are two of the books. There are support groups. There's all these resources. You know, when we talk about healing, you know, with all this, you know, a lot of time when I've had interactions and someone realizes that they're at a point where they're not quite healthy, you know, I'm like, well, what are you going to do? Well, I'm not ready for anything serious, you know, especially for someone that's where you're at. I'm just going to go date. I'm like, okay, so you're not ready for anything serious, and you know that, so you're going to jump back in, and you're going to, men are going to like you because, you know, you're going to tell them you're not interested, and, you know, you're going to hurt people along the way because you're hurting. Well, number one, I can tell that you're not that interested in making something worthwhile with me. Well, thank you for letting me know, because that's very unattractive, right? If I want something to work and it's something legitimate and I see it's an impediment to, could be a beautiful relationship, guess what I'll do? I'll stop dating. Stop dating even the person that I've been engaging with, and try and work on this situation. Because if this shows promise, I want to heal and give it a chance. The next one is love bombing. You know, it deals with love addiction. Primarily, this is going to work with women who are struggling with their perception of self, and particularly with their looks, right? Years ago, I was absolutely struggling with it, you know, and part of me not, you know, forcing myself on girls. Well, it's never been me, but also I have, or I did, I don't anymore, but I had a very pronounced fear of rejection that started when I was in middle school. And, you know, for me, getting rejected was the worst thing ever, because I would trace it to my worst insecurity ever. And it would all be about my looks, and I wasn't that confident in my looks. So it was like death when someone wouldn't be interested. So I just didn't try unless they were. Well, towards the end of my marriage, I was starving. I was starving for attention, right? I was starving to feel sexy, you know. And I one day went to a hot tub, and in my story I talk about Adderall and all the crap it did to me. But, you know, at one point I was losing weight and working out, and I was starting to look better. And I remember there were these 3 women in this hot tub, and they were beautiful. And it was the first time in a long time I could remember the women that beautiful being interested in me, and I could tell they all were. And whether they were interested in me or they were just competing with each other, I couldn't quite tell, but it was very clear. That feeling was intoxicating. And, you know, I stopped working as much, and any excuse to go over there to just feel that feeling. At that point, I thought I was a good dude because, hey, I'm not talking to him. I'm not doing anything. Well, that feeling destroys families. That feeling destroys families. I know a guy that goes to the gym I go to and goes up to married women all the time and says, hey, I am so married. I'm so married, but just so you know, you have the nicest I've ever seen. Yeah, sounds like you're so married, right? But he understands that someone that is hurting, the fact that they feel sexy can shift everything. The fact that they feel desired or wanted, right? And so these guys will love bomb, right? They will make you feel like the center of the universe, right? Constantly, you're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're attractive, attention, you're the center of the universe. Well, at the same time, if you're trying to slow things down, they're not going to be very respectful of boundaries either. But at the same time, they're love bombing you. So it's like he's pushing me to somewhere I don't want to go, but man, it's intoxicating, and I love the way he makes me feel and the attention he gives me. Well, they understand, and they can point out that you're probably, you know, hurting a little bit, so they're looking, for a quick way. Like I said, predators and deceivers, they don't want complex, long situations. They want something that's going to be quick. So if they can tell that this is going to start to work, they will start love bombing. There, at the very first of the book, The 5 Love Languages, which is a wonderful book, but at the preface, he's talking to his secretary. She comes in. I think it's her third marriage, met this guy. Everything's wonderful. I've never felt like this in my life. And we're going to get married, and this one's right, and we're going to be together forever. Well, they didn't, but she was experiencing the butterflies, right? Or she was experiencing that feeling, right? And that feeling can be a good feeling, right? It precedes love. But when we're feeling those emotions so high and so good, we have so much dopamine, serotonin, and different things flowing through our brain, we can barely sleep, right? We just think about each other and talk of each other. That is not sustainable long term. But if you're suffering from that, you're going to get love bombed. You're going to have them constantly tell you how good looking you are. They will pick parts of you where they know that will be insecurities of yours from either looking at you or talking to you, and they will make specific mention repeatedly of those areas, which will mean a lot, right? The end goal, again, is to keep kind of pushing boundaries, but they keep you around because you like the attention, you like the validation. Then eventually they get what they want, and you're left hurt, broken, and whatever trauma caused you to not have a lot of worth in yourself is much worse. So that's one way that guys will do it. If that is something that you find yourself prone to, for me, I had to decide where my self-worth came from, right? And at this point, I'm very confident in the way I look, but do I have certain insecurities about my appearance? Of course I do. Everyone does, right? If I didn't, I would be a real problem. My worth does not come from that, right? I believe in the end, the woman that I meant to, sure, she may like some things and be attracted to me, but if I'm 10 pounds more muscular or have this or that, right, probably won't make the difference, right? I look the same way I do and act, it makes me feel good. I like the way it makes me feel, right? I got my eyeliner tattooed, and my eyebrows, and my hairline tattooed, right? And it's funny, people will ask me, why'd you do that? Because it made me happy. And it's always interesting, the response, but because it made me happy. But my worth is no longer tied into what I look like. It's tied into, I went through hell to get to where I am. And the statistics of a guy living the rest of his life and not dying from drugs or causes related aren't very high. Well, I'm on that path, and I fully expect to, because I plan on doing the same things I have done to get me to this point for the rest of my life. I am a good man. I treat people good. I tell people what they want to hear. I am by no means perfect, but if I met someone like me, I would want to be friends with me, and I would treasure that relationship. And biggest for me is I am a son of the eternal God. The eternal God, the creator of everything. I have divinity in my blood. So, whether you're interested or not in me, especially if you don't know me well, that's fine. That rejection does not bother me one bit. In fact, I'm grateful if you let me know soon, because guess what? I can move on because I'm looking for the one that isn't, right? If I like someone and we're in it and then that happens, that obviously is meant to be more painful. But my worth is no longer derived in that. I don't get a lot of pleasure from people telling me, hey, you look ripped anymore, or this or that. It just doesn't do much to me. It certainly would mean more to me from a woman that I'm interested in, because I would want to know that I attract her, right? But when you just are getting complimented constantly, don't they kind of lose their value? I mean, this obsession with hugging is fun to me. And I'm not a big hugger, and I probably need to be a better hugger, but I will hug people I care about. But like, I went to a dinner a while back, and like everyone knows everyone hugs everyone, right? And then we're leaving, and I think one of the gals was like, well, you can give us a hug? I'm like, I already hugged you, and I had a guy there, I'm like, hey, will you hug them for me so vicariously I can get it done? And I was kind of just trying to be how I am. I was trying to poke the bear a little bit, but for me, those interactions are special. I'm not saying I have any issue with hugging people. I just, I find myself not doing it as much unless I want to, but I don't need that. I don't need that validation anymore, right? If someone's constantly commenting about how sexy you are and how neat you are all the time, you think that's exclusive to just you? No, that's their personality to anyone they're interested in. They're love bombing. So find what it is that has created this issue of lack of self-worth, especially when it comes to your looks, because typically those are the ones that are the most vulnerable to it. Deal with the trauma, go to therapy, deal with someone who deals with codependency, someone who deals with love addiction. You heal from that. Eventually these guys that lay it on, you'll catch it. And then you're not going to get caught up in this really messy, painful affair where you go to levels you wish you wouldn't have. Another one is an interesting one, right? And this one works primarily on women who are used to most every guy going after them because of their looks, right? And giving them what they want and buying them drinks and letting them, take the boat out or whatever, right? So one of my friends, and he's not here in Utah, you're not going to be able to figure out who he is, but he used to be a professional pickup artist. I was talking to him the other day, and I was like, what was your best move? And he's like, my best move was the move I used every time. I would go to a bar, and I would find a group of girls, right? And I'd find the girl I was interested in, and I would be funny and engaging and nice and everything else, right? And I would give every hint that I was interested in this woman, every possible one, right? Until she would finally become bold enough to be like, well, we should hang out, or, say something sexual. And I'd be like, whoa, no. And he'd shoot her down. We're just not compatible, right? You've set off flags like, that's okay, but you seem nice. But he would have already have talked to her, and he would have found out that she was going to be here. She was going to be out there, another time. And so between that time and the time he sees her again, she is bothered because she's used to getting this girl just has to bat her eyes and she's got a bunch of guys after her. Well, something shifted, right? And she's not able to get that guy. So it becomes an obsession, and maybe I'm not good looking enough. And it's almost proving to her that she's sexy or beautiful. So when she sees him again, man, she likes him a lot. Well, he realizes this because he's created this desire in her. Now she comes back and he takes her home and sleeps with her. And that's what he would do. That's how he would get her. And there's another story of a pickup artist that goes into a bar. There's a group of women. He can tell the one that's probably not getting as much attention. He's after the one that gets all the attention. So he goes and sits there and talks to the one all night, right? And eventually the one that always gets the attention looks over and, is a little, says something, and he looks and says, dude, does she ever shut her mouth? He goes home with her at the end of the night because she is so bothered because she hasn't got that attention. At that point, it doesn't matter what he looks like or whatever else. It's that he rejected her. You don't reject me, I reject you. If that's the issue, if you're basing it primarily upon your looks, that's sad. If people don't think that good-looking people suffer, well, they're wrong, right? If you're basing all your worth on that, as age takes your beauty, as it will, you're going to die a very painful death. If your worth is based upon money, you'll never feel like you have enough. If it's based on power, you'll just have an ever-increasing need for power. That's one of the great arguments for believing in something of the divine, right? Is it doesn't eat you alive the way that this other stuff does. Well, if it's based upon looks, I have a pest control business, and a lot of times I'd have pretty women come up and say, hey, can you spray my house? I'm like, sure. It's $109 or whatever. And, they'd be like, well, let me get back to you. I'm like, I wouldn't say it like this now. I've gotten more tact. Jesus has made me nice. But I'd say, I'm sorry, did you think I was going to do it for free because you're hot? The reactions were interesting. No, I'm like, yes, you did. And sometimes maybe that wasn't, sometimes it was. And like I said, I don't quite do it this way now, but the principle still applies. I'm like, if I did something for you just because of how you looked, I'm doing you a disservice. And I'm telling you that you're only worth what you look like. That's fantastic. You're pretty. Good. That's fantastic. There's a lot of pretty people out here. And if you're not pretty in the other ways, you don't stay pretty very long. I promise you. How many guys have been married to what they think is their trophy wife, and then 3 years later they have the most exciting affair ever with their secretary who they were never attracted to? If you don't connect, it doesn't last, right? So basing your worth on all that is tough. Again, it's going back. For me, one of the best ways for me to get my self-worth is to start to help other people. You know, as far as guys, this whole yes men, nice guy phenomenon, right? A lot of times these guys aren't that nice, you know, but I was at a function a while back at this overnight deal, and like these girls wanted this type of food, and they didn't have it there, but there was a gas station like 15 miles down the road, and the guy immediately said, "Oh, you want some? I'll go get you some." And literally within like 15 seconds, he was out the door. And I was like, wow. He just friend zoned himself forever. Like, oh, no, he didn't. He's sweet. I'm like, yeah, he is. But he did, didn't he? And they're like, kind of, right? A guy that gives you everything all the time probably isn't going to do that forever. You know what I mean? And if he doesn't know you and he's just giving you stuff constantly, well, you know, that's again telling you that, hey, that's what you're worth. And also, like, the best guy in the world, I don't think he's going to have the stamina to give a foot rub every night. And I know before we're married, we know we will. We know we will. We probably won't. So getting where your worth is at, right? Deriving your worth. When healing from this stuff, it's very hard to do when you're involved with someone. It's not impossible. Couples go to therapy all the time and heal. But the problem is when we are engaged with each other and we're inciting the emotions and chemicals that are involved with physical and sexual intimacy, they create a big stumbling block with this therapeutic connection with each other. I took a year off of dating when I got clean. A year. I was not healthy enough to deal with the shifts of emotion that would have come with dating. I'm glad I did. I've taken a lot longer than a year off this time, but I had to heal from something else that I talk about in my last episode. And you know, now I am healed from that, but I've been through all these things, and you know what? I don't like going through this stuff. It's not fun. I do not like being lonely either. You know, I'm home tonight. This is the third time I've tried to run this. Hopefully this time it runs, and it's not fun. But I spend my time talking with my therapist and prepping and healing, and for me, getting as close to God as I can, because that's the most attractive thing to me in a woman, is when I see God in her. And the woman I want, that will be the most attracting thing to her. Attractive is she'll see God in me. So, you know, if this resonates with you, my best advice is take some time off. And unless you're just looking for hookups, hey, if you're honest with people and they're honest with you, you know, my hat's off to you. Again, I don't think it's good for you, but you know, I'm certainly not going to judge you for it. I have a lot of friends that do that, and they're good friends, and I don't make moral judgments on them. That's not my place to. But if you want to heal and find someone and you struggle with these things, take some time off. And find that person that you can connect with. Find that relationship from the get-go isn't marked by these incredibly blissful moments and then all of a sudden these incredibly painful experiences, and then we hook up again and it goes back and forth. You're getting addicted. That's the same thing as a drug. You know, lastly, as I'm closing, you know, talk a little bit about, you know, some red flags. You know, the idea of when someone gets rejected, reacting in anger is a problem. It's a problem, right? If a guy hits you up on social media or you match, you know, on the swipe sites or whatever, and you turn him down and he immediately attacks you, the way you look. And by the way, that's one of the worst things you can do to a woman. I know women that have been severely beat physically, and they've been told that they were ugly, and they would have rather been beat physically. If a guy says that to you because you shoot him down, realize his pride is hurt, his ego's hurt. You've shot him down, and he wants to convince himself it's not because he's unworthy or unlovable, so he's going to throw all these things at you. Well, he thinks you're attractive because he went after you, right? But when someone's not interested in me, the last thing it does is produces anger. I'm not angry. Like, early on it produced heartache or, major rejection trauma. And now it doesn't so much. If I like someone a lot and eventually, there's some rejection, that's meant to hurt, right? But if it's early on and someone's not interested, they really don't know me. I'm not going to base my worth off their response of me based upon very little information. And I understand that, hey, I definitely don't work for everyone. In fact, I don't work for hardly anyone, as evidenced by me sitting on this chair and being alone by myself. But I will work for someone, and that's all that matters to me. But if someone's angry about rejection from the onset, imagine how that anger will parlay into life when different types of rejection hit. There's two things in me that turn me off from relationships quicker than anything else, and it's blatant disloyalty, dishonesty, and anger. And I can see them both very quickly. And a lot of the time, the angriest people on the surface are the quietest and the most outgoing a lot of the time. But, I can see it, and it's an issue. A lot of time women will talk about these issues and say, he's pushy, and he keeps pressing boundaries, but guys are like that. Quit normalizing the behavior. It's not okay. No means no, means no, means no. But if you normalize it with someone, you become complicit in it and it becomes okay. Stand up for yourself. You can mitigate a lot of this by setting boundaries right when you meet someone. You teach people how to treat you, right? I have a friend who's a doctor who says, I think she's either atheist or agnostic, but I will not sleep with a man for at least 3 months because I understand within 3 months he cannot fall in love. There's too much testosterone. I talk about this a lot more in the last episode. Well, I've been in certain relationship situations when I got out, I was like, how did I ever get in there? Well, I got caught up way too quickly in physicality, and it skewed my ability to see what was happening. It skewed my ability. It's hard to think objectively when we're feeling all these exciting emotions, right? I'll wait as long as it takes, minimum a month longer, in order to, see if I'm compatible with someone. That protects me. Someone that's just looking to get in your pants is not going to be able to sustain this behavior that long. They will grow impatient. They will look for someone else. They will look for someone else. You do not have to lower your standards or your what you're comfortable with to get the right man. You don't have to. The right person with wherever you're at and whatever your boundaries and goals will be aligned with you. And though it might be really hard in order to do it because you genuinely connect and like each other, there will at least be a concerted effort to say, hey, this is important for both of us, right? I want to wait till I'm married to have sex. I will. The next time, wait till I'm married to have sex. I just will, right? Well, one way I'll know the woman's right for me is if she wants that too. And although it's hard, won't be putting me in positions all the time. And, because I'm shooting her down, push harder and harder, because that's the effect it's typically had, right? It's a byproduct of trying to be good with girls that aren't used to guys pushing the brakes, is sometimes it can turn them on more. Well, that's normal. But if they sit there and push and press you against your boundaries just because they feel rejected or not sexy, that's selfish. That's not love. We don't hurt people we love. We don't push them to do things, that we generally care about. We don't want to hurt them. So don't settle. Life is too short to settle. It's too short to be alone. And it's too short to be with people you don't want to be with. I've been alone a lot this past year. A lot. I hate it. I don't think you have to like it. But I had to heal, and I had to get to a point where I can be alone and not make bad decisions. But we are meant to connect. I believe God was telling the truth when he said it is not good for man to be alone.